Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Caryn Kopp. Hi, Caryn.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I am very excited to have a conversation with you. I saw you present in one of the entrepreneur organization webinars. I was very impressed because you definitely have a very unique approach, methodology for sales that it works, and it's very unique, and I would like to talk about it. But first, I am going to introduce you, read your bio, and then we'll jump into talking about it.
Sounds great.
All right. So Caryn, you are the chief door opener, and it's registered trademark because this is what you came up with, is the chief door opener at Kopp Consulting, at Kopp Consulting, a 3X Inc. 5000 winner, which is very well, with over 25 years in business, and is best known for the door opener service, where senior level business developers known as door openers land executive level prospect meetings for their clients. Now, you're an internationally recognized speaker and an expert in business development, and you're the author of the bestseller Biz Dev Done Right.
Correct.
As well as The Path to the Cash, the words you need to bypass those darn prospect objections. Love that. Okay, so first of all, let's say our listeners are listening right now, they want to buy those books. Where should they go to do that?
Biz Dev Done Right, they can get on Amazon. And
Good.
The Path to the Cash, the words you need to bypass those darn prospect objections, they can find on my website for purchase, which is Kopp Consulting, Kopp Consulting, USA.com.
Awesome. And of course, we'll include it in the show notes.
Thank you.
All right, Caryn, so let's talk about chief door opener. That's a great position. Tell me about it.
Well, that goes back to probably 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. I was sitting with a friend of mine and showing her my business card for Kopp Consulting and the door opener service, and it said president on it. And she looked at it and she said, you know, that doesn't really describe you very well. I think what you should use is, and then it just came right out of her mouth. She said, chief door opener. You're the chief door opener. And I said, that's brilliant. And so that became my title from there on out. And I've had a lot of fun with that. It's a registered trademark, and so is door opener too. So if anybody talks about door opening, that should be us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, the connotation I get from door opening, and obviously I already listened to you, so I know what you do, but let's say I didn't know anything about it. You say door opener. I think, okay, well, it's kind of like overcoming the gatekeeper, right? I mean, that's the first connotation that I get, or the first idea. When you're doing business development, it's the first impression. It's opening the door. So
Right.
What are some of the concepts behind the door opening?
Well, most people struggle with this part of sales. And if you don't get the door open, you don't get to do anything else in sales. You have to get in the door if you want more sales. And so how can you get that done? People will often hire a salesperson and then say to that salesperson, your job is everything from opening the door through closing the sale. But the reality is that most salespeople out there, including if the founder or the business owner is the primary salesperson, the primary rainmaker, they're either really good at opening the door and getting the first meeting, or they're really good at having the first meeting and closing the sale. Both of those fit into the world of hunters, but in my experience, very few people are very good at both opening the door and closing the sale. And usually, if they're really good at opening the door, they may not want to spend their time like that. Or if they've opened many doors, now they're busy closing the sale. So who is keeping the top of the funnel full of new opportunities? And so that is the whole idea of the door opener. You can separate those functions in sales and have somebody who's crackerjack at getting the doors open, and they don't need to be at a conference or a trade show in order to be able to do that over the baked ziti. These people are very comfortable getting the doors open by calling an executive level prospect, emailing them, starting that conversation, finding out if they're the right executive to have the meeting with. And if they are, to go ahead and land that meeting. That's what the door opener function is all about. And it can be separated from the person who has the meeting and closes a sale. In the early years of the door opener service, we were getting our clients in the door and they would go through the door for an in-person meeting. These days, most of these first meetings are happening virtually, which means that we can do a warm handoff where our door opener, who represents our clients as if they were a member of the client's team, opens the door, gets that prospect interested, lands the meeting, and then is on the meeting with our client or our client salesperson to make sure that that meeting goes well.
Yeah, and I think this is brilliant. It's a brilliant service. It's a done it for you.
Yes,
that,
done for you.
Yeah. It's very interesting because I came up with my business model, similar to, I started as a general business consultant. I was very good at it, a lot of strategy, a lot of working with my clients. And then I found out that, and I tell them, okay, you need to document your processes. You need to document your processes. And week after week, it will be, yes, I know I need to do it. I know, but it's not being done because there are barriers, right? It's not, it can be said as I don't have the time, but usually when somebody says I don't have the time, it means I don't either know how to do it, it's not a priority, or I have other things that are grabbing my attention that I'm more gravitated to doing that.
Right.
So that the done it for you service of process documentation is very similar. It's something that is unique, but is very needed because then it opens the door for people to operate. You open the door for selling. And so let's talk about the difference between door opening and other lead generating activities that are out there. Okay, I'm going to reach to people on LinkedIn and just send them like, blank, just like send them blank messages or cold calling, or however it is that is, people advertise, well, I'm going to get you leads. What is the main difference between your service and a service like that?
Yeah. So when we're talking about an external service, lead generation means a lot of things to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big catch-all phrase. In many lead gen kinds of companies, they may only be doing email outreach. Well, email outreach creates awareness, but it doesn't engage an executive level prospect. You need the phone calls too. Sometimes a lead generation company will mean email marketing, it'll mean some social, and they may have some very low level, what they call SDR, sales development reps, who may be a couple years out of college, or it might be an actor with a good voice, or it may be moms who are home in the afternoon and just have a little bit of time and like to talk on the phone. Well, those kinds of people, those SDRs, and sometimes they're called BDRs, are usually no match for an executive level prospect. If you want to get the door open with an executive level prospect, you have to have the person who can basically have a peer-to-peer conversation with this executive, engage them in just a couple of seconds, say something incredibly valuable, and land that meeting. That's usually not something that a lower level SDR or BDR can do. And that's why when we do this job for our clients, we hire only senior level business developers. To even take an interview here, someone has to have a minimum of 10 years experience in end-to-end business development. They've done the job of opening the door. They've had the first meeting, the second meeting, third meeting, the proposal, the RFP. They've closed the sale. They understand the entire process of business development. but they happen to be these rare hunters that love the opening part of the job, and they have the DNA to do it. And so that's why this is different. Not just different, but it's more valuable for people trying to open the door at the executive level. Beyond that, we also have strategists here who understand business development and door opening and can help our clients refine the prospect group from this wide world of prospects that usually is targeted in a marketing initiative like an email marketing campaign, and to narrow that down to the group of prospects who need to know our clients, the ones who really need to know our clients. And then what do we say to those right prospects to help them understand why they need to have this meeting? Why is this meeting so important that they would knock 3 people off their calendars and make room for our client? That is the job of sales messaging. And most companies don't really take the time and go into the depth that we go into to make sure that every prospect on the list is the right prospect, and that the messaging is going to be a slam dunk when those prospects hear it. Those things have to be in place before any outreach is done, really, whether it's done by an external company or done by a company's internal group. And that's not usually the case. Most of the time when companies come to us and we take a look at the prospects that they've been targeting, many of them don't even fit the most current definition of the right prospects for our clients. So that's a lot of wasted time. There shouldn't be any wasted time when it comes to that. And when we ask them what the sellers have been saying to get these doors open, it falls far short of anything that would be meaningful for the prospects that they really want to meet. So most of the time, these programs are just not set up for success, and that's why they don't have success.
Absolutely. What you described here, Caryn, is brilliant because, I'm all about processes and I like to always build a process. Also in my podcast interview, you described a perfect process right now. You have to have in that process, you first of all have to identify, obviously, for the client. I mean, you have your clients, but they have to identify who is their ideal client. Who do they want to target, and who in the organization they need to target, right? Because we want to open the door with the correct person that is actually going to then open the door to the sale. So you have to identify the right person to talk to. You have to identify how to reach out and in what method you're going to use. It might be that the email campaign is good for broad outreach, but for that particular person that you want to reach is not the correct one. It might be phone call. It might be like what methodology do you use in order to reach? Like what communication lines do you use in order to reach the ideal prospect?
Yeah, so it's phone and email in combination with well-done LinkedIn message, but it's not a sequenced automated thing that 1,000 of the decision makers will get the same communication. That's
Right.
a marketing initiative, that kind of sequenced, non-personalized approach. The personalized approach is what we have found really works to open the door with these executive level decision makers. Like if you think about it, you're a decision maker for your company. You're at the executive level. If somebody who didn't know you wanted a meeting with you, what would it take? They would have to do their research on you, right? They would have to say something that was so meaningful that you would create time in a calendar that probably has no time in order to not miss out to hear what you have to say. That's that job of sales messaging. You'd have to reach out more than once by phone, by email, and maybe by LinkedIn. If you have an assistant, it might behoove them to befriend your assistant, because your assistant may be the gateway for getting that messaging in front of you so that you could say to your assistant, yes, go ahead and put that person on the calendar. All of these things are important, but it's rare that when people are trying to get these meetings that they actually do this. Because when I say to people, what would it take to get that meeting with you? They say all the things that I just said. And then I say, well, what are you doing to get the meetings with your most important prospects? And then they laugh because they're not doing those things.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So Caryn, in order for somebody to have a meeting with you, what would it take? Like actually, like when would you respond? without, you already know the ins and outs, but what would it take for somebody to want to have a meeting with you?
They would have to, as I said, do their research on me. What are some of the issues that I am likely facing that I am looking for solutions for? What information can I not get on my own? There's so much information out there on the internet. I could sit in my chair. I don't need to go to a conference or a trade show or a networking event to get all the information I need to make the decisions for myself. I can sit right here in my office chair and I could go online and find anything. But here's what I can't find, and this is where the brilliance of the seller can take over. I can't find and I can't know how to apply that information to my situation. That's what the seller can provide, those insights. And when you couch that in sales messaging framework that we have come up with, that's what gets the doors open. And most people don't take that time to figure that out. They're so busy with touch points and how many phone calls and how many emails. They're not focused on the quality of each interaction. And is that doing something to create what I would call prospect FOMO, fear of missing out? If I don't say yes to this meeting, but that's where the quality of this initiative needs to be in order to get that meeting with me. And for me to think, you know what? I'm going to take this meeting. I'm going to avoid these 3 other meetings. And I'm going to make room in my calendar for this meeting. And I'm not going to put it off. That's what it would take.
I think it's brilliant. And I would add to it, like from my perspective, it's true what you said in terms of you're going to offer, or somebody's going to offer you something that you might not be able to find on your own. For me, I would think, okay, well, I can sit here and do research for 5 hours, and maybe I will get on my own how I can apply that. But if you're offering me a solution and you sound professional, that's the thing, is like if you sound professional, you sound like you know what you're talking about. You don't give me those, empty flattery of like, well, I see you're doing great on creating a business or growing a bit. No, it's not empty flattery, but you can see it's a professional on the other end that will solve a problem. And my problem might be that I don't have the 5 or 10 hours that I have to sit to do the research.
Right.
And you can provide that solution. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
But I also think,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm thinking that it's also, because I'm just thinking about all the times that I've been approached and I go like, no, it's the assumption. You shouldn't be assuming, because that's what turns me off, is like, well, you are probably that. Well, how do you know? You didn't even ask me. So I think also the asking the right question, really finding from me, being interested in what is important for me and what prevents me from achieving my goals and where I want to be. Then if you can provide a tailor-made solution to me and I feel heard and not talked to, but there is a conversation, I would be open for a meeting.
Yeah. So here's the tricky part when it comes to exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
When you're reaching out in the beginning, you have to say something that will engage somebody who hasn't yet answered a question. Because I can't ask you a question that's too personal because you're not going to answer it.
No.
I have to pique your interest. And that's the job of the door opening sales messaging. We have trademark processes for developing that kind of messaging. And most people don't know that. So they'll say things like, I would love to talk to you. That's what the seller says. Well, I say to people who are in my seminars, I'm like, I know why you would love to talk to the prospect, but that's actually irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant here is why the prospect would love to talk to you, and you didn't say anything that would help that person understand that. So the door opening message, the message to get the meeting, is different than the message that you would use in the meeting when you can ask some of these questions. So it's tricky, and you have to say something that's not too broad, that the prospect doesn't see himself or herself in that messaging, and not too narrow that you create a disconnect.
Brilliant. I agree. The door opener is like you knock on the door and I have to go and open the door. And if I if the knock is not correct, or if I don't know, I go, who is it? And it's somebody I don't know, I'm not going to open. So you have to say something. So then I open the door, and then
Exactly.
we can have that conversation. And you're
Exactly.
absolutely right. It has to be brilliant. It has to be curated. It has to be done by a professional. And I can see that is, and I know that is the methodology, and that's how you help businesses. So what
Yes.
size of businesses will benefit from your services?
Yeah, well, most of the time we're working with companies that are anywhere between 5 million and 60 million in sales. And they've typically have grown through friends and family and their extended networks. And now, and sometimes by accident, and now they want to grow on purpose. So that speaks to exactly your audience, because now they're
Absolutely.
being very purposeful about accelerating growth. And especially if they want to add salespeople, they need to be able to provide salespeople with the ability to have more and more of these conversations. So while the salespeople are busy closing the sales, door openers can be adding new prospects to the top of their funnel. So we work, usually 5 to 60 million is a good sweet spot for us, but we've also worked with some very large companies. We've represented banks out there because they need to open the door with CEOs and CFOs. And we've represented some funded startups because they were looking to get in with bigger deal kinds of prospects. And they didn't have the talent on their team. The founder didn't have the time, so they needed to bring us in.
Perfect. That's perfect. That's exactly who we serve. So our listeners, you're listening right now, definitely reach out to Caryn. She knows what she's doing, she and her team. And it's brilliant because we all need to open those doors. And one more question, Caryn, in terms of so you explain who your clients are. Who do they serve? Like, do they have to be bigger companies like Fortune 500, or can they also work with smaller companies, similar size companies in terms of the B2B?
Yeah, so they can work with smaller size companies. The biggest factor is what is the size of the lifetime value of a new client for our client. So if they're buying, let's say, something that's going to be $1,200 a year and it'll never be bigger than that, that may be too small to work with us. So we're looking for deal sizes for our clients that are 50,000 and up, and the bigger the better. We have one of our clients right now has added $20 million in closed sales so far, with another 15 million in the pipeline. And he's closing very large deals. But those deals, when they close, also have the opportunity for expansion. And so in some cases, yes, he's getting in with some very large companies, but in other cases, the companies are smaller, but they have a big need.
Absolutely. What type of industry is in?
That was facilities.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Very, very smart. Caryn, if people want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Yes, they can find me through the website, which is Kopp Consulting, KOPP Consulting USA.com. They can also email me if they want to. I'm happy to receive a personal email. It's C, because my first name is Caryn with a C, CKOPP at KOPP Consulting USA.com. Either way.
Fantastic. And they can go to your website, they can email you, they can buy the book, and you definitely have a lot of resources on your website. So
yes,
they can go there, and your newsletter is fantastic. I actually follow that. I read it. You write very informative articles that people can apply. So I recommend that they also sign up for it. Go to your website and sign up for that newsletter.
Yeah, in fact, there's a recent article that I sent out a couple of weeks ago about sales success amidst sweeping market changes, because a lot is changing for people out there that they cannot control. But the one thing that they can control is their sales pipeline. And so the people who may have been your best customers before may not be your best ones right now. Where are you going to find the right ones? This article gives people a roadmap and a blueprint on how to do that.
That's excellent. I heard somebody said, I don't remember who it was, but like in times of recession, you never take, or not that I'm saying we're going to recession, or at times of uncertainty, you never take your salespeople into a room and said, okay, well, we have uncertainties, so everybody goes home and we're doing nothing. It's going to be the opposite. It's like you get your salespeople in the room and you go, okay, so we're just going to 10x our efforts because we're going to survive. So that's the difference between the passive approach of, well, there's nothing we can do, as like, okay, this is a great opportunity, because in every change, no matter what, without getting into politics or economic situation or whatnot, you always can have a chance if there are changes, and you have to be on top of it, but you have to be able to communicate to people, because that's one of the things I wanted to mention. There is a lot of noise out there. So in order to rise above that noise, you have to know what to communicate and grab their attention. And that's really what you are doing when you're opening a door, is you grab that person's attention. They go, you know what? They really know what we are talking about. I want to continue the conversation. And that's how doors get opened.
And the one thing I can tell you is, for your people who are listening, is that their competitors likely stink at this. So if they're doing it well, the doors will open. If they're not doing it well, then the doors will stay closed. This also is not the time where the sales team that is a sales team of order takers. If your market is shifting and your sales team is a team of order takers, you're going to be suffering right now, because you can't sit back and just expect that you're going to be getting more of the same. More of the same may not be what you need right now. What you need right now may be a little different than before, which means that you're going to need the kind of salespeople who could go out there and get it. So be realistic with yourselves, be realistic with your teams. Do you have the right people in place?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's also get the external help. I mean, that's where the fractional services come into play. You do not have to invest. I mean, in order to invest in-house in a BDR, or like a business development rep, or it is going to be very costly, and you have to train them and you have to know what you're doing. That's where you have a fractional BDR can be a great service, because they are just focused on what you need, and they're trained, they're fully trained. So
and remember, as we said earlier in the podcast, the BDRs and the SDRs are typically a lower level. So if you're looking to get in the door at the executive level, you're going to need a door opener, not a BDR or an SDR. But even to hire a person of that caliber, most recruiting firms will tell you it's 3 to 6 months before that person is onboarded and contributing. Whereas with us, with the door opener service, you can have a senior level person representing you, and we can be live in 3 weeks.
Brilliant. Okay, so again, I want to encourage our listeners to reach out to Caryn. That's definitely can be a game changer for your business. And thank you, Caryn, so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.